Now. So welcome everybody. I'm glad to have you join us for this Friday afternoon to talk ag data, something that I personally get maybe a little too excited about. My name is Hannah Dankbar. I manage the local food program here at NC State Extension. And today I'm joined by Dr. Noah Rennels, who is the director for the Eastern region of NC FarmLink, and also Laura Loffer, who's a program director of Empowering Mountain Food Systems at the Center for Environmental Farming Systems. Today we're going to talk about some new resources using ag census data that we've developed. So you can go to the next slide. There we go. All right, just a reminder, we are recording the session. So if you can keep your microphone on mute during the presentation. We will have time for a question and answer at the end. I'll be monitoring the chat as we go, so feel free to drop in your questions as we go. But we also organize this as a Zoom meeting, so you can come off mute and actually pose your question or any specific context you want to provide. So just some reminders about that. And I'll also be dropping some links in the chat as we go. And you can jump to the next slide. So today we're going to share our updated farm and food profiles. We're also going to share some sources for agricultural data, explain how this data can be used at the local level, and share some resources we've developed to help with that, and answer any questions. Next slide. So again, just to show, give a little preview of the updated farm and food profile. What we're going to do today is share an overview of the updated profiles, share some trends that jumped out during the data analysis part, share some resources that we've developed, and give some suggestions for how these profiles and those resources can be used, talk about some other supporting resources and programs, and then we have plenty of time for question and answer at the end. Next slide. Before we get started, I just want to thank our project sponsors. We received funding for this project from NC State Extension, both our agriculture and natural resources program area, as well as the local food program team, and also through the Center for Environmental Farming Systems, through the Empowering Mountain Food System, which is supported by the Appalachian Regional Commission. And then NC FarmLink was instrumental in supporting our data analysis. And with that, I'll kick things over to Noah. Oh, you're on mute, Noah.
That's important. Glad to be with you all today and to share this information. We're happy to follow up as needed if we don't get to some of the questions today. But starting off, I did want to put the two big numbers that we have, one from the census, and then the other one that's developed by ag economists here at NC State for the 111 billion. So if you take the total ag products off the infographic and the value of delivered timber, which actually is not part of the census, but a separate resource provided by the College of Natural Resources. And you try to make sense of those two numbers, you see that there's a 5.6 fold multiplier. And I urge you to consider that if you're looking to use the information from the local farms and food profile as a general multiplier for the impact of agriculture locally in your county. We've come a long way with the infographics here, starting back in 2012, going back to 2007 for the base data, and then coming forward, you can see that the last two, 2017 and 2022, have looked very similar, but the only notable difference was the value of delivered timber. And both of these were, hopefully from your feedback, both of these changes were made over time. These series of changes were made just to make that infographic more representative and more useful to folks at the county level and across the state. Picking out some highlights here, looking at the forest and farm market values, you can see we have some big winners in terms of percent increase from the 2017 data. Livestock, fruits, nuts, and berries, grains and oilseeds, up 25% or more. Ag tourism, vegetables, melons, potatoes, the crop and green industries, and delivered timber, and up 5%, but still an upward percent is better than not. Direct to consumer, intermediated sales, and green industries. So as these different um, numbers, these different sectors of agriculture in the state are useful to you, please consider pulling them out of the infographic in a way that features them better for your work, with a screenshot or just modifying that slightly. So it takes out some of the, um, admittedly, some of the noise that you might not be trying to share. And if looking at the farmland and farms highlights, we see the number of farms doing intermediated sales. So these are farms that sell through another entity, but it's considered almost direct. We have a 50% increase, up 62% in the number of farms doing that. Up 10%, the number of berry farms, nut and fruit farms, and green industry farms. We saw a decrease in animal farms and vegetable farms. Uh, and then we saw a decrease in the total number of farms, crop farms, and direct-to-consumer farms. Note that sometimes we'll see a decrease in the number of farms or operations, but an increase in the market value, which at the end of the day, I think for agriculture is still something to raise as a positive over time. We've set this up with a Go NCSU EDU link. Just remember the go.ncsu.edu/ag census, and that'll get you to the page containing all three of those resources. And of course, don't forget, up on top, we have the 2022 North Carolina and the 2017 profile. Also on these pages, if you scroll down, are the Council of Governments, which are groups of counties that work together regionally. And we don't want a situation to occur where they'd love to talk about agriculture at their meetings or strategy sessions and not have agriculture. So we went out of the way to get those put together. Very quickly, since this is all on the website, just going through how we provide the information backup for this. All the data, as I said, except for the forestry data, is from the Ag Census. But if you go to the right column here, that's a direct link to the quickest source. We're going to take a look at the county profiles that Department of Ag does at the national level. We, of course, think that ours adds a little bit of user friendliness to that type of profile and highlights what we'd like to make sure folks know. So that's just the first set of data. This goes on for 2 more pages. But if you ever have questions on what those numbers mean, please refer to this. And if that doesn't answer your question, reach out to any of us on the call today, and we'll certainly work with you to answer that. And this is the last set. So there's sometimes things that change over time. For example, in past years, the number of producers included in the average age has been just the primary producer, and now USDA doesn't do a primary producer in the Ag Census, so it's the average of up to 4 producers. So sometimes comparing things like the age of farmers from this census to the last one or the one before is really not comparing the same quantitative value. And that's down there at the bottom, the average age. Um, And I think, let me see, I have, yeah, just want to make sure that the census is a survey, which means that almost anyone can claim they're selling $1,000 or more of agricultural product and they can get in on the census. Um, and sometimes we have folks that, for whatever reason, aren't um, aren't that ready and willing to share information with the government, and we understand that. But what we also know is that the census is used for so many things in USDA and allocation of funds. um, and you can also get the census on the basis of voting districts. And because it's related to that representative form of government, it's really important that agriculture be represented as much as possible. Um, and the census coming only once every 5 years is a critical moment to get that information shared. So it's never too early to take a graphic like this. They don't have the promotional items for the 2027 census yet, but you can certainly share the link on the bottom, and the following sheet is what folks see. And then when the census is available for folks to answer, they'll get a notice in the mail with a code for them to conduct the census. And I think this is over to you, Laura. Any
Great.
questions at this point, Hannah, you want to try and get, or?
There was one question that might be worth addressing. Do the dollar amounts of market values control for inflation?
No, they are market value of that year as reported by the producer. Good question.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's so great to see so much interest in this resource. Our team, our communications team at CEFS developed these fantastic outreach tools for y'all. And you can see this Go link here. We have QR codes developed for you, tools you can use for social media, a sample press release. Next slide, Noah. So you can, if you go to that link, you can clip some of these press release and social media things that you can post into your county or organization social media pages and link to the infographic, and also to customize a press release for your county. And you can, like Noah said, pull out what you're specifically you want folks to recognize. Maybe it's something like, look, we have an increase in young farmers, we have an increase in veteran farmers. How can we support that? So these tools are really great, and I know I appreciate it when I get these things that are kind of plug and play. Next slide. So, who do you share this with? What do you do with this great resource? Most all county extension offices have advisory boards. We have seen folks use these for their farm week breakfast or lunch, and they turn them into placemats. You can laminate them and turn them into placemats. Share with your planning boards when ag issues come up, and of course, county commissioners when you're going in front of your county commissioner to talk about funding and support for extension. Local media, again, we've got that press release for you to use. Farmland preservation is real. Noah's going to go into that in detail, but this is a great tool to use there. And with farmers, and I do think this is a great tool to use with farmers to promote filling out the census. There are lots of food councils in North Carolina, and this is a great tool for food councils. Sometimes food councils get together and they're like, well, what are we going to tackle? This can be a great tool for food councils to say, we're really concerned about X, or we really want to help grow direct-to-consumer sales in our county. And then, the beautiful thing, we do have specific profiles for each council of government in North Carolina. So it's a great tool for them to use in planning, and of course with your NRCS and FSA Farm Bureau partners as well. Next slide. So how to talk about it. I've also mentioned this already, the Farm Week breakfast idea, talking with your planning boards around farmland preservation, your ag advisory boards. If you want to start a new program initiative, this data can help support a cause that you want to move forward. And it's a great conversation starter. What surprises you most about this in our county? What surprises you most about this in our council of government region? And when you're developing comprehensive plans, it really helps to have hard data to present to folks. And this is data that's coming from the farmers. Next slide, Noah. So what are some of the ways that we've seen this work? This data can help drive discussions, especially now that we have 3 sets going back to 2007. What are the trends that we're seeing? And what do we want to address as a community, as an extension office, as a county, as a planning board? Again, food councils can use the data to support and elevate local ag needs and existing programs. One of the things that we see are, a lot of food councils and extension offices work closely with farmers markets. If we want to go to the county commissioners or the planning board about starting a new farmers market or creating more resources for farmers markets, this direct-to-consumer sales data point is really helpful for that. We do have growing veteran farmers in North Carolina, and there are resources to support them. And if you're writing a grant application for any of these topics, this data can be helpful if you're looking for funding opportunities. And the increase or decrease in young farmers, what programs can be created to support or maintain this important trend of either increasing or decreasing young farmers. So before we created this set, Hannah sent out a survey to ask, how are you using these infographics, and what can we do to improve them? And so we can see here that ag advisory boards, county, town, local government, economic development staff, and food policy councils all had a strong percentage there. So we're really glad that folks are using these, and we hope now that with the 3rd iteration that more and more folks are used to seeing these. I work in extension offices all over the state, and I walk in and I see the infographics on the billboard, and it's really great. I think it can be a great conversation starter with all of these different stakeholders. And so how did they use the data? Budget discussions, strategic planning was the most, and that's great, as far as let's look at this trend. Let's see, how we can address the trend of lower direct-to-consumer sales or rising farmland loss or rising farmer age. How can we support younger farmers? So that's our goal, that this is a tool that y'all can use in all of these different settings. There's other supporting resources. Noah is going to talk more about how to use these, that it's not just the Ag Census, but these other resources can also elevate some of these issues that we're addressing. I'll hand it over to Noah.
Sure. Let's just check in with Hannah if there's any comments or questions that are relevant to this last section.
We are getting quite a few questions, but I think we can maybe save those.
Okay.
for-
Very good. Well, thanks. Keep those questions coming. They mean a lot to us, and there's no question that's irrelevant or not worth asking. Chances are someone else in the audience or in our group that we our groups we present to are going to ask the same thing. So it'd be great to help us be prepared. So we ask you to continue with those questions. Just some supporting resources here and highlighting some around farmland and how we'll compare the sources. For example, the annual statistics book that the Department of Ag publishes compared to the census. The Ag book comes out every year. The Ag census is every 5 years. There's a data lag, for up to half of the year for the state documents that come out on statistics, and a little bit longer for the Ag census. And the state has a moderate level of detail and specificity, while the Ag census is a very comprehensive survey of agriculture across the nation. And those are the links there, just so you have them for reference. I would like to shift a little bit to farmland issues. Many of you on this call, on this webinar, might be concerned over farmland shifts in North Carolina. And what I share here with you is a conversion of ag land to urban and highly developed land, as well as low density residential from 2001 to 2016 based on satellite information. So this is not a survey. This is actual satellite data. It was processed by American Farmland Trust. The reference and the opportunity to look at this data is there on the bottom. But you see where we would expect across the crescent, the Piedmont Crescent, going from Raleigh down to Charlotte. We have a lot of development, the red there representing the urban, highly developed and low density residential. And then you see pockets down east where we have Greenville popping out, and Fayetteville, as well as Asheville and other selected spots in the mountains. But this is a good graphic if you're trying to share information from the past. American Farmland Trust took that data, and this was that 2016 satellite data that ended that last study, and predicted farmland threats, loss of farmland through the year 2040. They did 3 scenarios. You can look at them. The slides will be shared with you. The link is on the bottom. Uh, but they called one development scenario runaway sprawl, another one business as usual, and another one better built cities. And you can see the slight changes in projected urban and highly developed and low density residential. So if you look at this map from top to bottom, you can see, those orange spots are the most predominant places where we're going to be losing most likely peri-urban area out into the countryside, with the 10-acre exempt lot status that we have, where county governments and zoning have no authority over development or the ability for someone to subdivide their property. You see those significant changes in the state. And as time goes on at NC FarmLink and other groups at NC State, and others working in the state like American Farmland Trust, we're interested in working with folks like you out there, whether you're within county government or whether you're a citizen, to help you understand what the numbers mean and how you can advocate for farmland and planning for agriculture into the future. This is a summary slide that Stephen Bishop, who is my Western counterpart in NC FarmLink, kindly did, using that data, 2016 to 2040, and the percent of ag land to be converted. It's not a pretty sight when you're looking at all those red counties with about 50% or more of their farmland estimated to be shifting to non-ag uses. If we hearken back to that $111.1 billion industry that the state has, and the percent of farmland that's being lost, we're going to need some really creative planning and really devoted efforts to try and keep that total value of ag to the North Carolina economy as high as it is, and allow it to grow. Because the farmland issue is important, and Uh, it's important to know the limitations of the Ag Census data, being that it's a survey. We do have some counties that show increases in farmland, and you wouldn't expect farmland to shift that much in the number. So there is this alternative tool out there that USDA NAS maintains. It's called Cropland Cross. Um, and you can zoom in, select the layer, which is just the cropland, and then the area, and you just go down here to pull down on the county. And you can go, I believe it's back to 2007, and get estimates. When you pick your year, just click the analysis button, um, and you'll get this slide, which is essentially cleaned up satellite data to include only uh, farmland, and farmland that doesn't include uh, trees in most cases. So this is a place to go to get acres of cropland in the state. This will be a little bit lower, and sometimes a lot lower than the Ag Census, because the Ag Census does include woodland and other land on a farm in there. But the vast majority of those acreages are in production. So shifting from that tool with inside a NAS, this is what the NAS homepage looks like. And if you were to go to NAS, you'd see find data and reports by regional or state field office. To navigate down through that, you would just click through two screens to get here, but it's a nice map, this screen, that allows you to get to the North Carolina publications, and that gets you to that annual statistical bulletin that I just shared earlier. And this is the front page of that document. Really easy to navigate off the NCDA website. Um, these are the reports that come out there, and you can see a lot of these are annually and even quarterly, monthly, and weekly in terms of some of them. These are used by industry across the state. To try and monitor production, and are useful for a variety of purposes, but they are much more frequent than the Ag Census, so they definitely have value. They have some great summary pages in there. Here's just an example of one, and really what I'm interested in on the bottom, because it gives up to 10 counties for a variety of specified commodities across the board. Hopefully, many of you can find your counties in here. But up on top, we know that uh, Sampson, Duplin are both, in terms of crops and livestock, really powerhouse counties for agriculture. Um, but you can see counties that are on the fringe of urban development, like Johnston County, leading in crop receipts here, one of the top 3 counties for 2022. And then all that information is pulled down for a county summary, just like the material we shared earlier and what Laura was sharing about that information in the infographic, the local farms and food infographic being useful. Sometimes you might go to this document to get more recent information, like the annual livestock numbers. But you can see here they also refer to the census in terms of the cash receipts, because that's not really recorded as frequently. It's really just the numbers of livestock in the production cycle. And again, the numbers on this side for the census of ag are also repeated here. So they don't change for 5 years until the next set comes out. I did want to share, if you go back to that homepage on the NAS website, to just navigate a little bit into the census, you can also choose back to 1900, 1910 census information documents on the left here if you're interested. But really what you're looking for is to go through the publication here, and really you can choose a variety here, but most of the times I would go to the profile first. And if you did that, you would get to our You would go to a state, a national map, click on North Carolina, you'd get to this screen here, and then you just click either on the statewide summary or any of the counties and get the profile that Department of Ag produces. I've got the state one clipped up here, but they do this for each county, and this is just a sample of a couple of items across that page. A lot of these numbers are represented in our profile, but this has been around for several cycles of the infograph of the census periods where we have infographics produced, and we find people appreciate the infographic just a little bit more because it fleshes things out and increases the focus. It's also a little bit easier to share with government and other agency staff, government county employees at the county levels. Something that is increasingly interesting to consider, a lot of times people will say that the most of our food production and agricultural value comes from a small number of farmers and producers. And you can see just by the state and these numbers in the census, you can go up to 500,000 or more, but you can see only the farms by sales are 18% here of 100,000 or more. And if you go up to 500,000, that number would drop as well. And then on the acre size, you see those same issues come out. But there's lots that can be told, that can be brought up to discuss around these issues. If we're talking about the number of people affected in agriculture and those people that self-identify as farmers, they're a really big part of our rural areas, and they're really interested in what happens in their communities. So we hope that the infographic and the local farms and food profile, as well as these other resources, will be helpful to them. They also have information here about internet access and organic farming and so on that they pull out in their data. So that wraps up our session. If you get a note from us in a coming week or so, we will include the whole deck of slides, and there's 2 appendix items which have additional mapping information. But Hannah, I'll go over to you and you can maybe field the questions.
Yeah, I first want to start off with a comment that came up in the chat about another helpful data source that includes both agricultural as well as community health data, and that's the NC Data Portal, which you can find at ncdataportal.org. I believe that's managed by a state agency, if I'm not mistaken, and is also helpful for pulling data that can support some planning efforts. To kick us off with some questions, this is building off of some of your last points, Noah. We got some questions about who's included in the ag census, as well as accounting for missing data. So one question, let me scroll back up to find it, about finding a way to account for the smallest scale producers. And there was a question about how small a producer could be to be included in the ag census. So you mentioned this a little bit, Noah, but do you mind clarifying what qualifies? Oh, you're on mute again.
Thank you. If there's a follow-up question on any of this, again, please follow up with us and we'll do our best to respond. But if you can report, if you self-identify as someone who has sold at least $1,000 of product, you can fill out the ag census. And I don't know that they look carefully at that self-reported revenue. So that's how you would justify yourself being someone who reports, who wants to fill out the census, and that is a market value. It doesn't necessarily mean sold. So they do not restrict it by acreage. Those are other aspects of government where, for example, a bona fide farm or present use value those are other state level. There's other state level criteria for whether you're a farm or not. So I think that answered the question there, Hannah.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I believe USDA targets their recruitment for farmers who report or have reported over $1,000 in sales. So that's who they try to hone in on, but it is open, as Noah said. It's pretty much a self-identify to respond. And then
Hannah,
we have a couple, oh, sorry.
Hannah, this is Amanda. That was my question. Hey,
Yes.
this is really interesting. So I looked at this after I asked the question, and I work more with the Census of Horticultural Specialties, which is also through the USDA. And it looks like their threshold is 10,000 for that census. And the difference is if you sell less than 10,000, you skip a bulk of the questionnaire. So a lot of the stuff on marketing and let's see. Yeah, marketing channels and some of the details on your crops. So I'll put that in the chat just in case folks want to take a look at it.
Yeah, Amanda, that's a great thing to add in, that there are other surveys and processes that NASS supports. NASS supports an office. The National Ag Statistics Service supports an office here in North Carolina. Tony Dorn, who's really helpful to any question you might have. And they have lots of, if you look at their state statistics book, you can see all the enumerators that call farmers once a quarter, or however indicated by that sheet I showed in terms of frequency, to get producer information.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, our next two questions seem really closely related, so I'm going to lump these together, and then if anybody wants to come off mute to add anything. So we have, for folks that do not participate, is there an estimate of non-response bias, and are there any adjustments for the missing data? And then, as I believe a sub-question to that is how to address those who are the growers that are not participating in all of the formal systems and may not be counted, because we know that there's some undercount for some counties.
Yeah, and I guess we might want to set up another webinar with Tony for a Q&A to follow up on some of these. Tony Dorn, who's with the NASS office here in the state. But I've discussed the response rate with them, and concerns that people might have over the response rate decreasing over time. This is one of the lowest response rates at 60 something percent. And they do what they can to ensure integrity of the data, and they have a process by which they go through and share coefficient of variation values for almost every parameter. It's important to add that the census list, as I understand it, just increases, because as people self-identify as farmers, they're added to the list, but I don't know if there are removals to that list. So of course, as the list gets bigger and more farmers don't fill it out or have changed and are still on, farmers can get off the list. But there's no structured way that I understand that USDA, every cycle will verify farming activity by those people. So that's one thing that depresses the response rate just a little bit. Other than that, that data on the cropland does document what is cultivated in a variety of crops based on spectral imagery. So from that, in terms of acreage, that's kind of a situation that can't lie unless it's a statistical and spectral error in assessing that data. But that's pretty solid science right now, so I don't think there's too many errors that come out of that. We just don't have the data on ag value, perhaps, that we might have. Other farmers who maybe are selling direct and or producing things for themselves that don't really record in the system, we can't swoop the net any finer, so to speak, to try and encourage those people to report, other than increase information about the census. And when it comes out, share what we have. And if people think there's errors in that, the first question is, well, I hope you're um, you'll be certain to fill out the next census and be counted.
Noah, there was a comment that the USDA ERS has reports on certain topics, minority, female producers, that folks might find useful. Is that a comparison that maybe we should look at or add to our resources?
Sure. We have that data um, in the county profiles that I showed earlier, and um, that's available. Now, given our current leadership, those data were presented in profiles for each county. Those are not available right now um, due to policy shifts. But if you go into the USDA census, you can get that data. It's just not available in a nice summary. But I add again that the profiles for each county do include that data on the left side of the back sheet. Did that answer that? Let me just make a comment on ERS. ERS is another source for information. As with a lot of scientific reports and community studies, some of the data sources are no longer available online. But if you go back to the census, that's a printed PDF document, and they'll be available through that. ERS does do other reports. There are some that are on hold, like the total study, which looks at land tenure. Last done in 2014, was supposed to be done again. Local food survey census was something also that we're looking it will come out. I think in what we send out to you guys, we'll include a link to the ERS section on the USDA website, so you can see what other reports are available. They used to have the um, food atlas, and that hasn't been updated since 2017. So we didn't include it in what we shared today just because it has limited current relevance. Does that get at that question?
And then I had two other questions just about maybe like repeating some things. Can you repeat the response rate? Was it 60% for the sending list?
It was under 70, and we'll include that also in our note with a link to um, how they analyze the data. We'll call that out in our follow-up email to everyone who's registered.
Thanks. And then can you, you talked about a multiplier effect at the beginning of the presentation. Can you just clarify where that came from?
Sure. Let me just go ahead and share back. Excuse me for the dizzying speed at which we're going backwards. That sounds too relevant. Yeah, I guess this is what the question is coming from, and we look at the ag census on the left, and our farms and food profile compares the 2022 ag census to 2017. The total ag products sold is from the census. The timber is not, but I added those together because this 111 billion includes both forestry and ag. So if you just did a ratio of, let's say, the close to 20,000, excuse me, 20 billion in product value and went to the 111 billion, which is our complete industry, there's a 5.6 fold multiplier in that. So if you were in Harnett County, you could plausibly take the sum of the ag products sold and delivered timber and say, as an estimate, we're using this 111 billion figure and assume that that's equally representative across all counties, and use this same multiplier and consider that whatever that came out with for Harnett County would be multiplied by that 5.6 to come out with a number that's somewhat serves as an estimate for total ag impact in that county, because this 111 billion is only done for the whole state, not by county. Hopefully, whoever asked that question, does that reply sufficiently?
Think so.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. It's a real important tool. And I bounced over something. Let me just go back to it. Oh, it's not on this slide for some reason. The census also includes taxes paid, property taxes paid. And hopefully it'll show up on this slide when you get it in PDF form. But across the state, there's, I think it was close to 160 million dollars that's paid, that agriculture pays in local taxes. And that's a considerable number. While it's not the local farms and food production and revenue to the farm, it is how farming is an integral part of supporting county governments across the state.
All right, and those are all the questions we had in the chat. Was there any other comments or questions to bring up?
Just wanted to reiterate the comment on the frequency of the different tools, that there's value available in the NCDA document, and that has a certain lag to it, but that comes out within the following year. And for the census, it's just over a year. And then those other annual reports, like the crop cross data that looks at cropland year to year, can give us a better feel for the changes. And since that satellite data, that's more accurate than either the NCDA or the census information.
Thanks, Noah.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions?
So as y'all consider using these tools, and if you're still uncertain, I want to encourage you to reach out to us. And I think it would be great for us to know how you're using it. We will send out an evaluation, and we'll ask how you anticipate using it, and if there's ways that we can support you. I work in the 12 Western North Carolina counties, but happy to in the region, the whole region wide, I'm happy to assist. In Western North Carolina, we also just released a supply chain assessment that is a good complement to this data. So I just wanted to reach out that I'm a resource. And of course, Noah and Stephen Bishop is located in Western North Carolina as well. And Hannah works with agents in every county. So this webinar is not the end of how we would like to support you and the use of these. So just want you to keep that in mind, please. Thanks.
Hannah, is it okay to go through the last few slides that I had prepped that might be useful to people?
Sure.
Since we've got you here, let me just go through two little appendix series of slides here. I didn't share the Ag Census web maps, which I think are a graphic depiction of the census that might be useful to you. Again, if you go to the census, each census homepage has a link to the Ag Census maps. You can see that the census data comes out in February, but those Ag maps aren't prepped till September, and that's a year and a half after 2022. But what they do is allow you the opportunity on a map to select from 5 general categories, and each of those categories has subcategories. You can zoom to North Carolina and show a state mask to fade out the areas around. You can create and print maps showing variation in a single date item across North Carolina. This can be useful for counties who are looking at peer counties to compare themselves to, or counties around a county of interest, of focus effort. And then you can select a county and view and download the county's data for a general category. So let me just go to that screen, and this is what you'd see online. You can see for presentation purposes, there's lots of dead space, but the places to look at, and please refer back to this series if you need. Here's those 5 different categories: crops and plants, economics, farms, livestock and animals, and then producers. And it's so small it's hard to see sometimes, but if you click on here, there's a pull down arrow way over here, but most of the information's on this side. Just click on the box, it'll pull down the menus, and from here there's got to be 50 or so parameters that are addressed. When you first go to this page, it'll be the whole nation, but if you go down to the bottom and click on the state and then apply a state mask, this is what you would see. You would see it without Edgecombe pulled up, but if you click on any one of these counties, you can see that data for that county. So it's one way that USDA NASS has shared this information. And just to give you a feel for what it could look like with a little cut and paste, is this. You get a little fading on the names of the counties, but the ability to modify a slide for your purposes with some screenshots and some trimming is pretty easy. So I did want to share that with folks today. And here is just reiterating what those web maps can show. So again, in each of those 5 categories, you have all these data points that are shared, which can be really interesting to look at a little closer. And then here, if you want to go to quick stats, I realize we're getting close to time, but if you want to do the deep dive into Ag Stats, you'd go to the data and statistics page, quick stats to go there. I do want to highlight that cropland CROS data layer, which you can look at any year of cropland for any county, 2007 all the way to 2024, is also available off this homepage from the data and statistics section. But if you go to quick stats, this is what it looks like. And each one of these, as you click and select it, will populate the next option. So it can be a little hairy, but once you get to know quick stats, it's really useful. And then you can get that data in a CSV file ready for Excel. And that was the only encore I've got. Back to you, Hannah.
So let's see. Oh, there was a question about quick stats. Can that be selected by zip code or just county?
Zip code used to be an option. It's not live now. I don't know if it's coming out for the 2022 census, but in previous census reports, you might be able to have that. That would be off the homepage of the census as you scroll down in the additional reports section, and they have reports for voting districts as well as the zip code. They used to have that.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen it for this most recent round, but maybe something to keep an eye out for. Last call for questions. We are coming up on our allotted time.
Take yourself off mute if you just want to ask it directly. Otherwise, I think we're really interested in your feedback. And, you know, in a day or two, if you're wondering about questions that arise as part of this, trying to understand the census and numbers around agriculture, just email us, or next time we do a survey, please be sure to reply, because what you see in terms of the product that we did this year is based on y'all's feedback. And we're really grateful for that, because it's a little bit noisy, some might say, but it's a lot of great data packed into one 8.5 by 11 piece of paper.
Yes, we hoped you were walking away learning something new about ag data today. We will have a recording as well as a PDF of the slides that will include links to some of the resources that we mentioned today. So those will be posted on our website probably next week. And if you think of a question or comment later, or just want to share how you plan on using your local farm and food profile, we would love to hear any and all of those things. So thanks for joining us on a Friday afternoon, everybody. I hope to see many of you soon. Thanks for joining us.
Have a great weekend, everybody.